All right. Good morning, everybody. I hear it's a little chilly in Central California, and everybody's getting their sweaters and their Uggs out to get all cozied up and warmed up. It's pretty cold here in New Mexico as well. So I hope everybody's warm and that we can work with our clients to help them find shelter and other things that they need during this challenging time of weather. I'm Dr. Valerie Leva. I'm a clinical supervisor for BHRS. I'm also a professor at Stan State MSW program. And today we're going to learn how to draw genograms. So today is going to be a little bit different. We're going to go through the PowerPoint, but I hope you have paper, pencils, eraser, some colored pencils, pens, crayons, whatever to show colors if you want to get that far. What we're going to do is talk a little bit about genograms first. We have a 3-minute video just to show you a really quick way to draw a genogram. We'll go over genogram symbols. I need to add a couple more symbols to the sheet. That's a handout. I think it would be helpful if you can print out the genogram symbols or take a picture of it with your phone so that you can have it separate from what you're working on the screen, because I can't show all the all the documents at the same time on Zoom. So we're going to go over a little bit first about genograms and how and why to use them. Then we're going to have time to draw a genogram. And I think it's helpful for folks to draw their own genograms because it helps you learn a little bit about your own family. You can draw a client genogram if you want to do that. You can make up a genogram. This is not something I'm going to collect or ask about. This is just for you. Then we're going to break, answer any questions folks have, and then we're going to look at how to indicate relationship patterns on the genogram. I'll give you time to fill those in, and then we'll process a little bit more. So it's going to be a little bit different today. I also want to announce that there's no training next week. Most interns have next Tuesday, Thursday off, so there is no training on Thanksgiving week, and we'll resume again on December 3rd, and the training time is changing at the request of some of your coordinators and managers. It's moving to the afternoon, so it'll be on Tuesdays at 3 to 4:30. So beginning on December 3rd, it will be 3 to 4:30, and please talk to your coordinator for the new link for that new time. All right, so I am going to start sharing my screen and excuse me, and pull up the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay. Give me a nod or a hands up, a thumbs up if you can see my screen, the PowerPoint. Okay, good. Because it looks like Zoom updated again since I last turned it on last night and it was giving me a different option. So as always, here are the BHRS Zoom training policies. Again, I don't mind if you eat or drink during training because I know for some people this is your lunchtime. So what we're going to learn today is use standard symbols to draw your own genogram and identify how to use genograms in counseling. If folks could pop into the chat if you've used genograms before, just a yes or no. Okay. Few people have, most people haven't. Okay. So genograms are just diagrams of a family, and they're used to explore relationships, medical history, patterns of behavior, substance use, etc. So there are a lot of different reasons to use a genogram. And sometimes I would use a genogram just to keep track of families, because most families now are not two parents living at home with the kids at home, grandparents living next door. I mean, that's I think that was a fantasy to begin with, and it just is not the norm anymore. And so we have to draw these complex relationships with families and keeping track of who has a relationship with whom and the intensity of that relationship and names. Just first names is what I collect. I don't collect last names. So this is just a way for me to keep track of families. It also is helpful for exploring family relationships. One of the things I always ask consumers when I do a genogram is I will draw it with them in the room and I'm asking them questions and I'm drawing it on my piece of paper. Sometimes if I have a big tablet, I can put it on the wall and we can draw it together on the wall. But when I'm done with the genogram, or at least one generation in a genogram, I ask people, what patterns do you notice? Or what stands out to you? When I first learned to do genograms, like 35 years ago, the first thing that stood out to me was that both of my parents are only children. Their parents, each set of grandparents divorced when my parent was 3 years old, and the father never had a relationship with the child after that, just moved away and never had contact again. And it was like, whoa, that is, I mean, how did two people with that same background connect with each other? And then what did that mean for me and for my family as to how my parents related to us? So it was a real eye opener for me. And it really is for clients as well. So today's going to be a little bit different, as I said. Um, Hopefully, you have a few minutes, if you haven't already, to get some paper and pencils together so that you can draw a genogram. And I recommend folks do it in pencil because you're going to, when you first start drawing them, you're going to have to erase and do it over because you won't figure out where to place the symbols. Um, and you make mistakes and you just want to be able to get it done. So this is an example of a genogram, and I'm sorry it's a little blurry because of the size of the image, but it's a way to keep track of family members, help the client explore the nature of family relationships, and to track intergenerational patterns around trauma, health patterns, substance abuse, relationship patterns, immigration, marriage patterns, primary relationship patterns. So it's just a way to look at the family from a written perspective. So it's on paper, it's more concrete. Some folks are visual learners and they can understand it more when they see it versus just chatting about it or talking about it. Nurses use genograms a lot when they're exploring health history. Social workers use genograms a lot when they're looking at relationship patterns. MFTs use genograms a lot to look at relationship patterns and how that affects the family now. So I prefer doing a genogram on paper and pencil because it's more accessible in the field. If you're doing not a site visit, a home visit or hospital visit, or your individual's homeless, you're doing counseling with, you're going to a school, it's just so much easier to use pencil and paper. But there are a lot of apps and software out there that you can use to draw genograms if you really function better in that milieu. So GenoPro is the most famous one. You could also use Word or PowerPoint to draw a genogram. So if you're good using the symbols app, and I usually would draw them in PowerPoint when I needed to draw them. If you're really good at using the symbols in PowerPoint, you can then draw the genogram in PowerPoint and print it out from there. I always give my client a printed copy somehow get it to them, even if it's the next visitor, if I'm visiting somebody offsite or in the field, so that they can continue to draw on it or look at it and explore the reasons for their relationships. So the first step in creating a genogram is to figure out why you need it. What are you trying to track? What is your goal in using it with the client or the consumer? So then you gather data. Sometimes you have to ask clients to go back to family and ask questions about family, or sometimes even drawing the genogram helps them begin to figure out what the questions are that they want to ask. There's a lot of secret keeping in families that don't function well. And so there's going to be issues around whose parent really, what were the patterns of relationships, when were people together, when did people break up, how did this person really die, that kind of thing. So it's really important to gather that information and then process it with the client once they bring it back to counseling. Then you create the genogram structure itself, and then you add the symbols and lines. So I'm going to go over some of the symbols that we use. Generally, it's recommended that you draw a 3-generation genogram. If you are younger in your 20s and don't have a primary relationship or children, draw yourself, your parents, and your grandparents. The person, say, in their 40s or 50s and they've had children, draw their The index person will be in the middle, and then their children's generation under them and their parents' generation above them. So 3 generations is really the minimum you need to really look at family structures. And I'm sorry, there's a fly in my studio and it's driving me nuts. So the index person has double lines around them, so you can see who that person is that you're interviewing. Males are indicated by a square, females with a circle. A transgender male has a circle in the middle with a square on the outside. Transgender female is the opposite. A pregnancy is indicated by a triangle. A miscarriage, a triangle with an X. An abortion, a triangle with a line through it. Somebody who identifies as gay, who is identifying as male, has the male symbol with a triangle on the inside, lesbian circle, triangle on the inside, bisexual male, similar with a dotted line, triangle for females, male and female. Bisexual, I'm sorry, bisexual is the dotted line on the inside. You can see the stillborn male, stillborn female. Institution, I'm not really sure where I would use that symbol, but we'll explore that. A pet is indicated by a diamond. Somebody who identifies as more than 2 cultures, male and female, they have the squiggly line there. If they're immigration, male or female, they have the squiggly lines, 2 squiggly lines. Deceased male and female, I don't know why the X is not through deceased female, but you put an X through the middle. Their age at their time of death goes inside the symbol. I also, once I get on the whiteboard, I can show you the symbol for adoption, for foster care, and for somebody who identifies as non-binary. So we're going to look at a really brief video, and I'm going to move some things around so I can get to my cheat sheet in the chat and put the URL for the video in the chat. And here we go. So again, it's just a really quick 3-minute video just on this gentleman drawing a genogram. So take a couple of minutes to look at that, and we'll come back to the large group when you're done.
Hi, Valerie. I don't think we could see the link on the chat. Well, I know I can, and I think some other people are okay. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know. Let me make sure. Chat. I think I might have just sent it to one person. Sorry about that. I've sent it to everybody now. Hey, Fatima, can you give me a nod if you can see the link? Okay, thank you. Okay, I think everybody's had time to watch the video. So we're just going to jump into the deep end. I'm going to turn on the whiteboard here. I'm going to continue to share my screen. I'm going to be drawing and talking about my genogram on the whiteboard, and I will answer questions as they come up. So please put questions in the chat. I'll be able to see the chat and also use your voice to ask questions. I think I'll give at least 25 minutes to this activity. So we'll be doing this until 10 till the hour. Again, do your best. I'm going to draw my generation and try to get my siblings in there. It's challenging. My generation is small, but my siblings have been married multiple times. My wife's family, her mom is one of 14. It gets really complicated. And not all those relationships are important to show on the genogram. I'm just going to show the ones that are important. So I'll show you how to do some of that. So let me stop and see if there's any questions before we get started. Okay, so get out your paper and pencil. I am going to move over to the whiteboard. So I might have to stop sharing to get back into that. And I'm going to start drawing my genogram. Where is my whiteboard? There we go. Okay. Please do not draw on my whiteboard. I'm just going to start drawing here. And I'm having to use my cursor to draw, so it's a bit of a challenge, but I'm going to do my best. So I'll start here. Here's me. Because I'm the index person that you're talking to, you draw two circles around it. Um, identify as lesbian. So I put a little dotted triangle in the middle. And folks see the whiteboard, so just nod. Okay, thank you. So then here's the, oh golly, where should I put all these lines? Here's the basic, right? Mother and father. Okay. Here's my mom. And here's my dad. And my mom died at 72. So I'm going to put through there that she's deceased. My dad died at 97. I'm going to put him deceased. Okay, so I'm going to draw some new symbols. So you draw a double slanted line here if people are divorced. You draw one line if they're separated. And if they reconcile, you draw that line. If people identify as non binary, you put half of the male symbol and half of the female symbol. So you would put a square on the bottom and a circle on the top. Let me try to draw that a little bit better. Okay. And then this line here, let's give me, what if never married? You would draw a dotted line here if never married, like that. Um, and honestly, genograms were developed probably 50 years ago in a very heteronormative, white, middle class psychology culture. And so sometimes I don't care if people are married or not, unless it's important to them. So if being in a relationship is important, just relations together or broken up, um, I will just draw a straight line. I don't care. But if somebody's adopted, you put this line as a dotted line. Let's give me a sister. That's if, I'm sorry, if somebody's a foster, you put a dotted line. And if they're adopted, you put a dotted line along with a straight line. And then you put the year they were adopted. So let's say, and I put adopted 1986. Okay, my mom's history is kind of complicated with marriages because my mom had multiple affairs, and I haven't figured out how to draw this. So I'm just going to draw in my siblings first. And so she and let's see. You know what? I'm not sure I want that one there. I'm going to erase some of that. See, I already need to erase some of this because I've decided I want to show it a different way. Oh. So, as my mom was nearing the end of her life, she started telling us who our dads really were. You'd always suspected because we look not alike at all. You would even tell we were related if you saw us. So, so this is my oldest brother. He died when he was 62. And this is my sister. She's 75 and still living. This is my other brother. He died when he was 49. I'm going to erase that. Oh, I'm sorry, I put highlighter instead of pen. So you can see some of the challenges of drawing this because some of my images have gone away when I really wanted them there. Drawing this online. Let's see. I'm going to put, what about adopted out siblings? I'm going to show that in a little bit um, because there is a way to show that. We don't know anything about these men. It's kind of hard to have that conversation with your mom about, so who is my dad really, right? So, got to be careful with that. 72 is when he died. Um, so 1947 to 62. And then 64 to, oh wait. So my mom was married to Mr. Lester, my older sibling's dad, um, from 1947 to 1962. So they are divorced. So I put that double line there. Then she married my dad in 1964 to her death in 2008, is when my mom died. Um, s- so, like I said, when she was within a few weeks of dying, she told us that my brother Nick, and usually I'll put names down here. My brother Nick had a different dad. Um, my brother Steve had a different dad. This is Steve. Um, she got pregnant before she married Mr. Lester, and my mom was only 16 when she married him, and he was 42. And I think she got married off because she was pregnant. It was the 1940s and would have been a huge scandal. I think there is another guy here. So I'm going to erase that. We think that my sister is Mr. Lester's only child of this whole four thing. So the fun part is she was still married to Mr. Lester when I was born because she was having an affair with my dad. And she divorced Mr. Lester and then married my dad later. But Mr. Lester's name is on my birth certificate. So this is the challenging stuff that you find when you work with family. So that's my basic parents and siblings. And you can see how complicated it is already. This is my sister Vic, and this is Val, and this is my imaginary adopted sister Jen. Okay, so I'm going to draw my parents' parents. And my parents are both only children, or so we know. My mom allegedly has brothers and a sister um, that I've done some genealogy work about and have discovered, but we did not grow up knowing that they had any siblings, actually half siblings, which is pretty much all that we have in my family is half siblings. Um, they were both divorced. They were divorced. Golly, 21. My grandma was 21 when she died, and it's probably 79, I think, when he died. Don't know how old he was when he died. And she was 86 when she died. Yeah, that's about right. You would put the marriage dates if you have them here and here. So let's see. So now you can also write notes next to your people. So he died of cancer. She died of an infection. There was no penicillin had not been invented at the time. Uh, don't know how he died. She died of cancer. He died of old age, my dad, which essentially means once you're past 90, you tend to have missed all of the um, illnesses that most people get, including cancer. And he died of pneumonia because he was old. My mom died of Parkinson's. Mr. Lester died of cancer. Don't know about these other guys. Now, he's a big challenging one. Both my brothers died of suicide. So that is a huge pattern in a family that you would want to talk about. And let me check the time. Anybody have questions yet about how to draw a particular relationship? Okay. So now I'm going to try to draw my siblings' relationships. My brother has been married 3 times, 2, 3. And the earliest one is farthest out, whether you draw in to the left or draw it to the right. It just depends on the size of your sheet and where you can put things. They were divorced. They were divorced. And he had one daughter here. She's had 2 relationships. And so here's a situation where my niece isn't going to get married. She doesn't believe in marriage, but she's had these relationships, and here they are, right? Oh, I need to change one because my great niece now identifies as non-binary. So let me try to draw that. And they, I'm not sure what pronouns are using. They're 14 and this little guy is 8. And she's broken up with them again. I think she's 38. And I'm not going to talk about my brother's relationships, so I don't need to put a lot more detail there. My sister has been married 4 times and married each time. Um, Divorced here. She passed and divorced here. And this is where she had her kids. My niece. My nephew has 9 kids with 4 different women. I'm not gonna, I mean, I have a relationship with them, but it's not one that has a lot of emotional charge to it. My niece has 2 kids that I do have a pretty active relationship with, and she's been married once, and she has a daughter and a son. Okay. I've been married once. This is easy. Once and no kids. Um, I've been married 25 years. Or relationship for 25 years. Let's put it that way. Okay. Now my spouse, you know, she has, I'm gonna draw her and here and her mom over here. Oops, didn't do that right. I'm over here. They're divorced, but they never remarried. So they had one, two, three, four, five. Boy, girl, girl, boy, girl. Everett passed away. I think he was about 55. Oh, I put Judy in the wrong spot. See, this is what you do. She's kind of in the wrong place in terms of birth order. She's not the oldest. She's the middle. Let me take her out here. And this is Gina down here. So I do have relationships with some of these folks. So here you go. If you're going to draw this generation, this is my mother-in-law's family. I'm just going to say 14 sibs, right? Because I'm not going to draw those out because those I don't have relationships with any of those people really. I mean, we see them at holidays and stuff, but it's not important to me, but it is important to my partner. So if I was looking at that kind of relationship, I would draw a couple of them out. So here I have this giant family. Let me see if I can get a different color. So I'm just going to do this so that it's easier to see. So for instance, I'm sorry, this is how you show who lives with whom. And you use a dotted line, and I would draw a different color, right? So this is how um, you draw somebody like that. So if my older brother had been adopted out, I would use the same color, but I'll show you what I'll do. Let's see. So let's say he lived with his daughter and one of her kids and one of their kids, and I would just put an arrow up here, adopted out. Because there really is no other way to show it with symbols. So you just write your note. Or you could put, I don't know, maybe you could even highlight somebody. Let's highlight my sister. And oh, that's a terrible color, but there it is. And I would say adopted out. Okay. So you can see some patterns here with, change my highlight color. Yeah, I can. With patterns. So I'm going to highlight in purple the suicides in my family. I'm going to highlight in yellow the people who died of cancer. That's not a big pattern in my family, since neither of my parents died of cancer, but you can see that there. Um, the people who lived a long time is important in this family because, I mean, honestly, we're planning for how much money do we have to have in retirement? So my grandmother lived to a pretty old age, considering she had cancer. My dad lived to a pretty good age with no medical issues. My mother-in-law is currently 93. Um, so both of us need to pay attention to the ages our parents were when they passed because we need to plan for our future. So let's do, and then, oh, the other thing I do on my genogram is I'll make a smudge of the color and say what it's for. Old age. So here I'm going to do another one. Um, let's do something over here. I'm going to do orange. And then I'll say this is for substance use or alcohol. So SUD, AUD. Okay. So let me highlight in that color. So let's say he had problems. He had problems. I don't think anybody in my parents' generation. Oh yeah, my father-in-law had problems. Um, Everett had problems. Zena had problems. She struggles with it. Partner number one and two struggled with it. The ex-husbands, one and three had issues. So you can see that there's a lot of substance use history in my family, which is not uncommon anymore. I think it's kind of the norm now. Let's see, let's pick another color. Oh, let's do dark green for veterans, military vets. Oops, I don't want that color. Military. Let's get back to my. So you're going to start coloring people in different colors. Great. He was. He was. He was. He was. Oh, I don't know who he is. Okay, he was. Erased. Uh, My eraser. We go. Um, Anybody else? And then maybe even putting in a C here means combat veteran. So people who might have a higher risk of PTSD. So I'll put a C here and a C here. Nope. A C here. He did not. He did go C here. So those guys were in combat. What are some other things I can show here? Oh, depression and PTSD. Heck yeah, let's do that. Um, so I'm going to use colors now on my, because I'm starting to run out of colors. D means depression. I tell people I come from the Prozac poster family because got a D there. She has a D there. He had a D there. I have a D here. My partner has a D here. My mom, where's my mom? I lost my mom. There, she had a D there. Um, don't know about any of these other folks. Depression clearly has a genetic predisposition in my family. Let's put another color. PTSD. PTSD. Yeah, those poor combat vets did. My sister was married to a combat vet. Oh, yeah, hub number one was also military. I need to do that. I had PTSD. I have it because my family had PTSD. Um, no, about that one. Highlighter. Let me get back to the yellow. My sister's husbands were in military. And where's my C? Just a regular black C color. And they were both combat veterans. Okay, let me check the chat. um, Watching video now. What if never married? What about adopted out siblings? Okay, so we addressed those. So let me see. I can put my pets on. I think I'm back on black. Am I? One, two, three. I have a cat, number one, cat number two, and a dog. I'm not going to put it for other people because we have a ton of pets in my family. So let's see if we had somebody who was uh, transgender male. You put the male on the outside, female on the inside. I think we've covered just about everything. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes or 5 minutes, another 5 minutes of quiet to look at your genograms and look at your symbols. And then at 10 till or so, we'll get back together and start talking about them. And I'll still be monitoring the chat and online if you have questions. Okay, I'll go and ask everybody to bring your attention back to the larger group. I've just been filling in a few things. Um, I have my genogram I wrote when I was in grad school in the 80s, and I just pulled it out. So this is a long time ago. And I put stuff up I didn't remember because it's been a long time since I went into this much detail. You can also put immigration patterns here and two culture folks. So all of my partner's family identify as dual culture. They're from New Mexico. They've been here since like 1600. So they identify as Spanish with a lot of Native American heritage, since they all did their DNA and found out they were 40% Native American. My mom's family is Scottish and Cuban. Interesting combo, but that's what happens in Florida, where we're from. My dad's family is colonial American English and some Scottish. And that's my heritage. And my family's been here. The last person in my family to immigrate came almost 200 years ago. So very embedded in the United States. And I do not identify as two cultures. So you can put immigration info on here. You can put language info on here. All of my partners' parents' generation speak Spanish, but almost no one in her generation speaks Spanish. Her parents didn't want her to have an accent because they experienced a lot of discrimination, even being native born, but having a Spanish accent. So I look at my genogram and I'm looking for patterns. What do you see? So I see a lot of green. So there's a lot of military veterans. Certainly in my generation and spouses, my parents' generation, it was all men. So this is when the draft was in effect. For my parents' generation, it was World War II in Korea. For my generation, it was Vietnam and then the wars in Central America in the 1980s and 90s. I don't have anybody in my family and the younger generation who's joined the military. A lot of PTSD in my family. I should put it for my mom too. I think she experienced PTSD. I put combat, a lot of combat vets in my family. And in this family, interestingly, there's a big pattern of suicide. Um, there's a couple in each generation. And so, fortunately, that has not been a pattern that has continued with the youth. We've been very careful about that in talking to them about mental health, depression, and suicide because we know it's a pattern in that family that increases their risk. So, I'm going to stop sharing and I want to go back to the larger group. Oh, do I want to save this whiteboard? I don't know. Let me try to get out of sharing at least. There we go. And are folks back to the larger group? Just give me a nod if you can see everybody. Yeah, thank you. So look at the genogram you drew and what patterns come up for you. And feel free to share with your voice. Let's get a conversation going about this. Doesn't matter, and you don't have to tell us if it's your family or a client's family or a made-up family, but what patterns do you see?
The one that I did, I feel like it was a lot of like dysfunctional relationships or like separations of like spouses, whether it was divorce or just separations in general.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
was kind of like
Yeah.
the main pattern I saw.
Okay. Other folks, what patterns did you see? Do you see in the genogram you've drawn? Give it a go. There's going to be patterns in every genogram.
I found that there's a lot that I don't know.
Okay. Absolutely, absolutely. And some of you yourselves maybe have been foster children or adopted, and you don't know information, particularly if you want to look at, oh gosh, if you want to look at all of it, relationship patterns, medical history, immigration history, et cetera. So that is something to be mindful of with clients, or they might be cut off from a parent and just have absolutely no information about that side of the family. Yeah, thank you. Other folks, what do you notice? And don't be shy. This is how you have to coax it out of clients. I'm like, ask those open-ended questions. What else do you notice? Instead of asking, do you notice anything else? That's a closed-ended question. Ask an open-ended question. What else do you notice? What patterns do you notice? Is there anything that surprised you? Is a good question to ask. Is there anything that dismayed you or made you sad to see? Is another question to ask. Um, how does this help you make sense of your family and relationships? Is another question to ask. Because you want to ask a lot of these open ended questions in depth to get in depth answers from the client. So you get rich, open ended answers so that you can then use it to explore with a client. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and go back to the PowerPoint. And look at relationship symbols. Okay, so this is also where your colored pencils come in handy, or your font colors if you're doing it on time. Here are a bunch of different ways to denote relationship patterns. Um, Most of them are self-explanatory. The smooth lines, smooth solid lines, as you can see, usually mean a good solid relationship, solid green lines. Um, Dotted lines indicate some distance or a poor relationship. The wiggly lines indicate hostility, and the compressed wiggly red lines indicates violence, and the compressed wiggly blue lines indicate abuse. You've got different ways of denoting what kind of abuse. Fused means two people who have this dynamic to the relationship where it's like they're almost one person. They don't have separate identities. Their identity is primarily in the relationship. And limerence, I love this word. I had to look it up this morning. Limerence is when you have an obsession merging into a stalking relationship with someone you believe you have a relationship with, but you do not. So limerence, fan and admirer is one thing, or focused on is one thing, but going to limerence is extreme. So I would say pick three different relationship patterns that you want to draw on your genogram, and we'll take a few minutes to put those in. So I am going to go back. Hopefully, I've saved my whiteboard. Ah, yes, I saved my whiteboard. Yay. Okay. So I'm going to need to look at my cheat sheet over here, the relationship symbols. My mom and her first husband had a pretty violent relationship. So I need to draw this in red. Let's see. And you just kind of have to jump over people. And I put an arrow indicating, oh dear, I'm in the wrong generation. So let me erase all that. Erase that line. That's him. Okay. See, this is why I say you got to have a, yeah, this is it. You got to have an eraser. So it was a very violent relationship towards my mom. So then I want to look, are there any other domestic violent relationships or abuse relationships? My sister and her first husband, yeah, very violent relationship. He had out of control PTSD from combat. He did not know how to control. Um, that's about it. Domestic violence wasn't a thing in my relationship patterns. Go back to my pen and get the green color. I have a really close relationship with my sister. Where am I? I'm here. So one. And so I'm going to hatch because we're like best friends. Um, the thing to note about my family is that everybody in my family of origin is deceased except my sister. And so she's somebody I have a primary relationship with. Despite our differences in politics, we decided to call a truce on that and not hurt each other over politics. And let's see what else. I have a super close relationship with my spouse. And let's see. I have a close relationship, not super close, but I have a pretty close relationship with my niece. So that's double lines in green. Let's see. So that's friendship. Anything else I can put on there? Yeah, I had a hostile relationship with my dad. We did not get along. Actually, we cut off. So let me sign, let's see the cut off sign. My dad was a crank and uh, not a very good dad. So you put the solid red line and cut off. Okay. Oh, where is fused? My mother and my brother were so freaking fused. It was ridiculous. Fused. Three, two lines, three red lines for fused. My mom and Nick. One, two, three. And my mom and my dad had this crazy fused relationship. They were one mind with a little bit of hostility. Okay. So take a couple of minutes and put yours in, and then I'll talk about how to ask questions to get this information. There's a question in the chat. Are these symbols pretty standard or do people change them as they please? These symbols are standard. So I'm going to annotate this relationship pattern a bit. You can see how messy these get, but I kind of like it. So I'm looking for relationship patterns. So something to note is there was abuse from my mother's first husband towards her, which probably accounted for the affairs she had. And there was a close hostile relationship with my dad. And look at this triangle here. My brother was fused with my mom. He had a close hostile relationship with my dad. My mom had a very close hostile relationship with my dad. So these guys triangled each other all the time. Triangling is when a couple pulls in a third party to project their feelings for each other. They project them onto the third party. And so that's a pattern you see if you look at things from a family systems perspective. Um, I also got pulled in a lot. I had a conflicted relationship with my mom. At different parts of my life, I had a close relationship with her. At parts of my life, I didn't have a great relationship with her. But towards the end of her life, I had a very friendly relationship with her. And I cut off my dad because he was just bad news. So that's how I got out of that triangle, was just cutoffs is not something I recommend, but sometimes you just have to if the person doesn't change their behavior and it continues to be damaging to the person. Um, I had a distant relationship with this brother because he was such a part of this triangle. That dynamic damaged our relationship with each other. And so I just said bye bye to the drama and pulled myself out. And as a result, he stayed in the triangle until he died. And then I never had anything but a distant relationship, but a very close relationship with my sister, very close relationship with my partner, close relationship with my oldest brother, close relationship with my oldest niece, and with her daughter. So you can see that, if this was your index client, you would see the different kinds of relationships and patterns in the family. Interestingly, that my sister grew up in this household with these two parents. She's a good bit older than I am, and witnessed domestic violence of her dad towards her mom. And no surprise that her first husband was violent towards her because she replicated the pattern that was in her family of origin. So I'm going to stop sharing here and go back to the PowerPoint and talk about how to process this with clients. So, processing a genogram, sorry, first thing to ask is what I asked: what do you notice about the relationship patterns in your family? And get the client to articulate that in as much detail as you can. And I'd be writing notes. Again, I give my clients a copy of the genogram. I give a client a copy of my notes that I'm writing in the session, not my progress notes, but just my notes about their family. A next question is, what do you notice it likely impacts your relationships with your family members? So once you get that relationship pattern information into the genogram, you can start processing that. So I noticed this pattern here from this generation to this generation. I noticed this pattern here across all your siblings. How do you explain that, or what do you think about that? What is your place in the family structure, and what is your perspective of how you fit in it or you don't fit in it? Who are you close to? Who are you distant from? Where do you fit in the family support system? My sister and I are strong supports to each other. My partner and I are strong supports. My partner's sister is a strong support to us. So those kinds of things are important to note as well. Where do you fit into the system of support? And interestingly, there's not a lot of symbols for showing support other than close relationships. So genograms are also developed in a milieu of a family dysfunction. So it doesn't focus on strengths. So you kind of have to make yourself aware of strengths and ask questions about strengths, and maybe even make up your own symbol for strengths. Who supports you? Whom do you support? And what other support might be available within your family if you need it? So that's how to flip this from a deficit perspective to a strengths perspective. So I want to open it up for a couple of minutes for any questions you have about genograms before we wrap up for the day. What was this like for you? Was it confusing? Is it making sense for you? Is it helping make sense of your family? Did it surprise you? How confident do you feel in using with clients? And again, you can make it as small or as big a genogram as you want to. And I recommend starting small if you're beginning to use it. So what questions do you have in the chat or with your voice? Man, you are the hardest group to work with. I swear, you guys never say anything. You're so funny. And you're probably hungry on top of it. So I'm just going to move on. So, in the chat, just put in the chat, how are you going to use this with families and what focus are you going to explore? Is it going to be substance use? Is it going to be family patterns? Is it going to be health? What are you going to explore with families? And thank you, Miriam. It helps to lay out the picture of the family dynamic. It really does in a way that's amorphous when we talk about it, but it's concrete when we get it down on paper. So in the chat, what are you going to focus on with clients by using a genogram?
You could use this for SUD. I had a client that didn't realize the addiction like wasn't she had a lot of shame. So once I used a
Yeah.
genogram to see that it was genetically and it was from her environment,
Mhm.
and that worked out very well. Like she was able
Excellent.
to kind of see the severity and the seriousness behind the concern after that.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Miriam, thank you so much. Miriam said the support or lack of support family has. Absolutely. What else is it showing you, or how will you use it with clients? Potential health family history, absolutely. So there's genetic predispositions to substance use, there's genetic predispositions to mental illnesses, and also environment plays a large part. Yeah, focus on relationship patterns they might want to continue or change is a huge one. Yeah, and that was what was helpful to me, as it was like, I don't want to do relationships the way my family did. But then I look at substance use. it was it's all in my generation and younger. There's no substance use in my family, so I wouldn't go towards adult children of alcoholics for somebody in that situation. If I was working on substance use, I'd focus on, so what factors do you think precipitated substance use in your generation? Absolutely, Miriam. Generational trauma. Boy, when I use this to look at generational trauma and migration experiences, it is a huge eye opener for a lot of people, because folks for whom their parents were the one they migrated, a lot of those stories aren't told if they were traumatic. And so going back to families and trying to get some of those stories opens up a little bit about what are the traumas in the family and what are some of the other generational traumas family might have experienced. So this is really good. Really good. Thank you. So, a couple of things I want to reiterate. Please use these with your consumers. I always recommend doing this on your own family first and asking your own family questions, because that helps prep you for what it's going to be like for your consumer to ask questions of their family. So, next week's topic is Happy Thanksgiving. There's no meeting next week. On December 3rd, remember, we're going to start meeting at 3 o'clock on December 3rd, and it's a new link that you need to get from your coordinator. We're going to talk about reconnecting with family after sobriety. Um, there are so many situations, if you work in children's system of care, where a parent has gotten sober and wants to come back and have a happy family, and the kids are like, "You're disqualified as a parent because you were not available when I needed you most." And that's a real challenging situation. Same thing on adult systems of care. When people gain sobriety, they're trying to, especially after in adult systems, it's usually after many decades of abuse, substance abuse, they're trying to reconnect with families where they've burned bridges. So there's a really good model for reconnecting with family after sobriety. And I think that that's a really good and important topic to talk about, especially around the holidays where substance use and alcohol use goes up. So I hope you all have a great 2 weeks. I hope you get some rest next week. Have a happy holiday, however you celebrate it or don't celebrate it. Go to the movies, go shopping, sit in the sun, do whatever floats your boat, and take care of yourselves. Bye bye.